My musical career, well, that's a bit of a Pandora's box, I suppose. It's certainly an interesting story for me anyway. Um, my name's Lawrence. I'm originally from Lancashire, as you can probably tell from the accent. I studied music at Dartington College of Arts in Totnes, Devon. I did piano, that's classical and jazz. I did composition, and I did research in music, especially the music psychology. And I actually wanted to do a career in it, and I nearly got to a PhD course, but it wasn't successful, unfortunately. Several things happened, and I came to London looking for gold, I suppose. And interestingly, even with that, something that would be doomed to failure, I ended up winning a scholarship about 8 weeks after I arrived in London. And I was able to study with Vera Yelverton on the Fritz Gottlieb Memorial Scholarship for piano. I then went to study with an international performer for 2 years, and I gave lots of concerts across London and Edinburgh. So one year, especially early on, there was a massive heat wave, and I'd been invited to give a concert at St Mary's Cathedral in Edinburgh. So I got there, I had to go by coach in this heat wave, and I was performing one of these fantasies by Liszt, St Paul Walking on Water, or is it St Francis Walking on Water. And it was really exciting, but I was so tired. Then I got back to London on the Sunday, and when I got to Tuesday, I had to go into London to do central London to do a lunchtime concert in one of the big churches there. And then I went Thursday, I was doing a concert for a social group in Edgware in North London, Hertfordshire. And then on the a day later, there was another concert on the Essex Greater London borders. And anyway, it was such a great buzz to be every week doing 2 or 3 concerts and getting really excited about it. I used to write my portfolio out all the time. I'd feel physically sick with excitement. I really wanted to do it. But something really interesting happened. I think several years in, I got something like when people become completely dissatisfied and tired of it. I wouldn't call it a burnout, because I think that refers to something that's essentially medical. But I actually really lost interest, and I went through a period where it was really hard. I couldn't listen to classical music anymore. I still practiced, of course, and I was still going for advanced tuition. That never stopped, at least for a long time, but I actually couldn't face performing, and it sort of tapered out, and some very interesting and exciting things happened after that, although I had no idea what was going to happen. And I think the present situation is that I've sort of taken a new interest in my music, and the internet, I feel, has opened up so many opportunities, and I've really enjoyed working at home on an electric piano, which is surprisingly actually very good, and performing and recording from my front room, especially during this COVID crisis where concerts are actually not really allowed. And I've been enjoying making videos and just working on the assumption that I can play something in my front room, which is actually my bedroom, it's a studio for that, and what I play can go to the whole world, and it's just really amazing. And actually lots of people in different countries have listened. I don't know to what extent they've listened, but the stats do show a lot of different countries over the last few years. So anyway, some different things happened. The music sort of went a bit awry, and some other interests took over. I particularly enjoy playing the repertoire of the Romantic composers, especially the turbulent pieces such as works by Chopin and Liszt. But I've also performed many Beethoven sonatas such as the Pathetique, Moonlight, Appassionata and Waldstein. I always perform from memory, and I don't really worry about memory lapses. I learned to play by ear initially. I just sat down at the piano in a relative's home and began to play just like that, and obviously it astonished everyone. Later, when I was at high school, the headmaster arranged for formal piano tuition for me, and I went on to take a degree course at the very well-known Dartington College of Arts in Totnes, Devon. I came to London and, as I've said earlier, I won the Fritz Gottlieb Memorial Scholarship for piano, which enabled me to study with Vera Yelverton. One of the patrons of the award was the well-known Vladimir Ashkenazy, although he and I never met. So as I was saying, the performing career sort of tapered off, and for a few years I got very interested in creative writing. I tried a novel. It was a really pathetic idea, I think at first anyway. I've tried a psychological thriller, which was very, very made for TV, and the very stereotypical, the housewife's neurotic and paranoid, and it's possible the husband's playing mind games, and with a story like that, you can never really develop the characters. Nevertheless, the book attracted lots of interest from a literary agent, and she gave it 4 years' worth of attention, but ultimately it wasn't successful. So I decided upon what is now my debut novel, Secrets, which is a sort of bloke's novel. This did attract a lot of attention from several sources, but eventually, because of the competitive nature of publishing, I had to go down the print-on-demand route. A lot of first-time novelists are choosing this option now, and the costs are surprisingly low. In fact, the whole thing cost me £90. That was about 10 years ago. And I at least have a book in the British Library that's available pretty much all over the world. So in all, I think POD, print on demand, is an excellent idea, as long as the author is really committed and does all the proper editing work and marketing. Nevertheless, like with the performing, I do have a number of regrets about publishing a work that hasn't really been promoted and advertised correctly. Lots of things led me to write Secrets, which was my debut. It was mainly friendships that are formed in childhood, and what happens if those friendships end abruptly, say through tragedy, such as a murder. The book was, after all, based in Lancashire, near the Saddleworth Moors, where similar things had happened in the 60s. And I was obviously growing up in that area. I was quite affected, even though many years had passed since. The effect on people growing up in Greater Manchester and Lancashire was quite catastrophic. Anyway, I wanted to explore those angles of lost friendships, but I also wanted to create a safe place for the main characters as adults, somewhere where they could relax and be themselves, a place where readers might also wish to be. So I wanted moments that were really chilling psychologically, but also balanced with fun and laughter. I think that balance is crucial. If there's too many pleasant evenings in, or hikes in the countryside, then there's no real story, nothing to attract the reader. But if there's too many scares and things going wrong, then the reader won't be able to cope with it and they'll lose interest. So a lot of that writing, as I said at the start, it really typifies where I grew up, and I can see exactly everything I've written in Secrets. I can actually see in my head as areas in Lancashire that I grew up in. Almost exactly a year after publishing Secrets, I then published a second novel, Egghead, which was written primarily for teenagers. The interest in writing teen fiction came about for several reasons. I certainly hadn't done it before, but first of all, my debut novel, Secrets, had contained several scenes told from the perspective of children and teenagers. In this case, a 10-year-old boy and a 16-year-old girl. And I'd really enjoyed the experience of writing from these perspectives. I found it freeing. Second, having read a lot of adult fiction, mostly crime thriller, I'd often seen a type of stalemate situation in the personal lives of the major characters, i.e. they're very often disillusioned in some way, especially the crime investigators, or they may be recovering from major problems like PTSD. So it can be very interesting, but I sometimes think it creates a tired feel. And in many cases, I often abandoned a novel I was reading halfway through because I just couldn't cope with that tone that had been set, and knowing that another 150 pages would be along the same type of lines. I felt in the teenage fiction genre that the protagonists generally have a lot more energy and are prepared to take all sorts of crazy risks. And that's what I really like in a novel, just knowing that something really crazy is going to happen and there's no way of predicting. So I wrote Egghead, and it involves a boy at the ages of 14 and 17. I don't want to give any things away. He has to go to a coastal town in northeast England, and because of a mistake he makes, and he basically really struggles, but it becomes very thrilling and dangerous. So, did I find it easier having written a novel previously? I think in certain ways. For instance, Egghead took 9 months to write, as opposed to Secrets, which had taken like 5 years. In other ways, I found the writing a lot more difficult. I had much higher standards. I kept going back through the manuscript and pruning and cutting out sections that I felt just weren't good enough. I self-published it again, and I think, like with Secrets, I'm really glad I did it, and I'm glad some people read it. Most of the people were amazed and said it really should have been taken up professionally, but I do have the regrets about the general distribution and things. I ended up writing poetry. I never thought I would, but I do it every week or every 2 weeks and publish online. And this poem I'm about to read is The Wintry Shore. It goes: New Year's Day, the deserted shore. Specks of rain muddy the sand. The tide rushes backwards, waves that crescendo hammering against rocks as temperatures drop and dusk falls. Night. So in closing, just 2 things to bring this up to date. First, I did publish this autobiography. That was about 2 years ago, and it's my 3rd book. It's called My Musical Journey. It's mainly about music, but it does contain some personal stuff as well. And then secondly, at some point in all the strivings with the creative and performing arts, I chose to do some languages, just really to take time out, and every day now I study French, German and Russian. So that's it. Thanks for listening.